I'm sure it will be. We'd like to welcome the Honourable Minister Jamie Fox with us tonight. And we also have our Police Chief Dave Poirier and Directors J.P. DeRosier and Director Kristen Dunsford and Brian Harlick on the controls here, and all members of council are present. And our CAO Rob Philpott is with us, and so at this time we'll continue on, a number of items on the agenda, and we'll turn it over to the councillor in charge of Police, Fire and Emergency Services, Councillor Barb Ramsey. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mayor Stewart, and I'd just like to wish everybody a happy new year, council, mayor, directors, Minister Fox, and all you out there in YouTube land. On the agenda tonight is speeding on Craig Avenue, and I believe it was Councillor Greg Campbell that asked for that to be on the agenda, so I will turn that over to you, Greg.
Thank you. It's more than speeding. I'm looking for council to give staff direction to, we do have a speeding problem. I got figures here from back in 19 where we done a 2-day one in the end or middle of September. Total number of cars eastbound on Craig was 790, and we found out that 22% of them are going over 60 kilometers an hour, and the speed limit up there is 40. So we've been working on it for the last year or two. Dave's been great. We put up 40 kilometer an hour speed signs, plus he's had patrols up there, and we've had the speed dolly every once in a while. That just works well enough to satisfy the people that live up there. It doesn't slow anybody down, I guess. But what's starting to make people worry up there is a big new development across McEwen. It comes out there's 170 units going to be up there of families. Those cars are coming out direct line with Craig Avenue, so you can imagine when they shoot out from where they're going down to the mall, they're not going to hit Craig and then slow down. So we're really concerned about maybe, I know suggestions. Dave had one about making it a one-way. Might be a great idea. That'll cut the speeding in half anyway, but it'll also see, Walker is really handy, and Walker is more, it's a wider street. It can handle the traffic, same with McEwen. In fact, I think, no, Aaron's not here, but I think the developers kind of gave the city a hand, put a curb up there and at least a walking area to get out of the thing. So we've been working on it. What I'm looking for this evening is just permission to give this information to Aaron and them and see what they come up for us and do a vote on, because we're going to have to do something, and we might as well get ahead of it because they're not going to stop their building. It looks like they're going to be going all winter, so we'll be into traffic in spring or summer. So if I'd ask for our guest presenter a motion to give this material. We've already done the counts and stuff on them, so it's just a matter of Aaron and them put together an idea and get out ahead of it, because they say that they're going to shoot out of that new subdivision, hit Craig, and they're not going to. It'd be nicer if they just kept it one way or the other, but the plans comes right out directly with. It'll be another four-way stop, and that means we'll have 2 four-way stops in 100 yards of each other.
So what street are you suggesting be one way? Sorry.
Craig.
Craig.
Yeah, not coming up this way. I mean, coming up this way, but not going down off of McEwen, because a lot of people are pulling in, going to McDonald's and stuff like that. So.
Just curious, I wonder what the opinion is of the people living on Craig. Are they in favor of one way?
Everyone that I've talked to them, yeah. Okay. They're definitely anything at all to get slowed down. In fact, some were talking about, I mentioned we have a couple portable speed bumps if you wanted to do a trial on them. There's some disagreement with some of our staff and with some of our counselors that if they want to take the 2 of them and set them up for a couple of days before they go, put them where they go for the rest of the summer, it'd be a great chance for them to do it before and do it after, see if the speed bumps do. I'm not a big fan of the speed bump.
Well, there's a big difference in the speed bump and the speed hump. The humps are in front of elementary school, and they work.
That's what I say.
So
leave it up to Aaron and them and trying to come up with a solution for us. You know, present it here when we do.
I know, thank you, Councillor Campbell. I know when I received an email last night regarding Duke Street. And so since we put the speed humps in front of the elementary school, it's working wonderfully, but everybody has moved over to Duke Street. So this one lady tells me, so I let her know that I would pass that on to our police services. So anyway, if we go ahead and let Dave and Tech Services look at what can happen on Craig Avenue. And did you have something
Yes,
say?
Madam Chair, thank you very much. Just for clarity, I don't think we need a resolution tonight, but if council generally just wants to give staff direction, what we'll do is Tech Services and Police will investigate options, traffic management options for Craig Avenue, and we'll bring back a recommendation. And at that point, if council decides to adopt any of those recommendations, then we will need a resolution.
Wonderful.
Some of the citizens are wondering if they can get, we got 110 trailers that come out into that too, from the trailer park. A lot of walkers and stuff like that. The next solution would be sidewalk up along there to get them up off the street,
Step two.
out of the traffic, because there's not room to, and like I say, 110 trailers, plus there's 50 people living in the Green Gable Park there,
Fox
plus I think there's another 15 up the road, and 15 houses or homes on Craig, so there's a lot of traffic up there.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Ramsey, just before the meeting started, I think Councillor Snow had a light on for a question.
Oh, I didn't see, I'm sorry.
I just want to make an amendment to the community services agenda, but we can wait till we get
Okay.
there, that's all.
And I'll just throw this into Councillor Ramsey, and then
Yeah.
we'll go back to you. But I think I want to welcome all the viewers on YouTube tonight, and as well as members of the media are watching and listening, I guess, and the Journal Pioneer. So welcome to all, and again, back to you, Councillor Ramsey.
Well, no, I think that's it for police services. Oh,
I could have mentioned to the mayor, he asked about the people on there. I have given them, it's a year ago now, I guess, the traffic counts and stuff like that. I just dropped them off. People who weren't home, I put them in their mailboxes. So they're all aware of what is going on.
Thank you.
okay. So if that's it, thank you, Councillor Campbell. So I guess we'll adjourn this meeting for police.
Just before you do,
Oh.
then, are you going on the fire too? Or is that, I'm just wondering, but the new fire truck, I understand, will arrive maybe next week?
It does, it arrives next week.
So I think I'd mentioned maybe the arrangements could be made whenever it is, but once we get the exact time and date,
Yep.
something can be arranged.
Yep, we'll let you know.
Engine
Yep.
3, I think, is going to arrive on Thursday. Is that it? Is that what?
Actually, Sunday or Monday, we're trying to
Sunday
nail
or
that
Monday,
date.
okay.
So we'll,
So we're looking forward to that. And
Long drive from Winnipeg.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So hopefully they have good weather, and yeah, so that's it, and that's all for me. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ramsey. Councillor Snow, Community Services.
Thank you, Worship. I'd like to call the community services meeting to order, but before approval of the agenda, I'd like to get approval to add Confederation Trail, snowmobile pedestrian to there. We've been receiving some calls, so if it's okay with my fellow councillors, I'd like to add that under B for community services.
Thank you. Is there unanimous consent for this? I guess that's the policy. Everybody agrees? No problem?
I'll
Okay.
take that as
Thank you. Go
we're
ahead.
all good. So first up, though, we have the Dome update. Our Director of Community Service, JP DeRozier, is here today. I'll turn it over to him for an update for council.
Thank you, Councillor Snow. Here this evening with a fun, kind of exciting project that we're working on in our department. As council knows, we're moving forward with the plans for our multi-purpose turf dome facility located at Credit Union Place. We've been receiving an awful lot of interest from the public, from user groups from across Prince County and beyond about the dome and kind of what it's going to entail and you know, looking for further details. So I thought if I'm getting those questions, I'm sure council probably is too. So it's probably a good idea to bring council up to speed on kind of where we're at. So that's why I'm here this evening. So the first item I want to chat about is just sort of the status and where we are in terms of design and the process we've gone through. So the design tender closed earlier in August this year, was awarded to Belcor Engineering, a local firm here. We've been working with Belcor since that time on a number of elements associated with the dome. We've conducted as well a number of site visits, the University of New Brunswick, the Moncton Sports Dome, the East Hants Sportsplex, the Dartmouth Sportsplex, and as well the Truro Cougar Dome. Those are all the domes in the region. We wanted to be as thorough as possible. We had some really good meetings with those operators and really great learning experiences, not only on what to build, why to build it, what not to build, why not to build it, those types of things, as well as the operating challenges that many of the venues face and the opportunities as well. So those are all shaping the design process that we're following. I presented our operational plan for the dome to Rob in early November to kind of get a sense of his approval on where we're taking things. Safe to say, I think he was okay with most of the plans thus far. We've received some early architectural drafts in November and plan to put some more solid kind of details behind those this month and again in February with the project tender date in April and hopefully project construction as long as the snow melts in time in May of this year. The goal will be to have the turf and the dome structure ready to roll for November of 2021. And other elements of the facility completed shortly thereafter. So it's a fairly quick construction timeline, but fingers will be crossed that we get the weather and we get started early. Some facility features. So the turf field size is 80 meters by 76 meters. So for all of us that deal in feet, that's 262 feet long by 249 feet wide. It's 65,000 square feet, so it's large. It's about, just for some perspective, it's 14 basketball courts side by each, or 14 school gymnasiums side by each.
How does that compare to the one in East Hants?
It's half the size of the one in East Hants.
But this meets Canada Game standards.
Yeah, well, yes, sure. We're right now we're still kind of working with the Canada Games on what venues are going to be, what sports are going to be played in what venues. The games are obviously going to be using it. We're still working through what, but certainly, yes, it will. So yeah, that's the size.
They have the size of the one in East Hants?
The one in East Hants, yeah.
Is only half the size?
No, ours is half of the size of the one in East Hants.
Okay, yeah, I was saying.
No. The most comparable one, if you've ever seen the one in either Truro or Moncton or Halifax, or sorry, UNB's. UNB's is really the model we're following right now.
Okay.
That's the size.
What about the one we saw in Dartmouth? You and I and Corey were over there. Is that
That's
similar?
a similar size as that one. That's 2/3, so it's there. That one's probably a little bigger.
Beautiful.
And again, for some perspective, it's 75 to 80 feet high, so it's large in terms of trim height. So, yeah. So right now we're looking at possibilities of indoor tennis, indoor basketball, baseball batting cages, golf tee blocks, netting, football uprights, even things like laser tag and paintball and so on and so forth.
Just to see on it there, sorry.
Oh, sorry.
You had naming names of each one, and that this will be something that the council can decide on the name of it versus the discussions we got in regarding streets. These, they have sponsors, where were you? Back up on the Cougar Dome, I don't know what that, and Sports Dome, East Hants, BMO. Anyway, I know what you're thinking, JP.
Yeah.
Every time you blink,
We're working with current sponsors at the moment.
I can see the dollar signs every time you blink.
But I won't get into that at the moment, but
Okay.
there's some real positive discussions being had with corporate partners as we speak. But I'll just leave it at that for now. So just for some orientation perspective, this is an aerial shot. So the right-hand side of this map is Bob Dewar Avenue, where my mouse is cursing right now, and Willow along here, and then Greenwood along here. So tennis courts remain, beach courts remain, solar farm. This black line is the dome itself. Additional parking being added in here. A welcome facility that we're still in the process of designing, as I mentioned. This will remain as an access road in for equipment to get in through our equipment door. And these are all of our electrical and blower equipment located right here.
John, what's there right now? What is there right now?
It's a grass soccer field.
Okay, the grass soccer.
Used to be a concert site at one time.
Perfect, okay.
Yeah.
I know where it
What's in that red square there?
That would be the welcome building. So that's where you will enter into prior to entering into the dome itself.
And the Bob Door Street is between parking and the building?
Right here,
Oh, on the other side?
right along here, yeah.
Good.
So this orientation works well in the sense that we're going to be able to add some parking. As we know, Eric Johnson Turf Field can be a bit of a challenge with parking in the summer months. But in the winter months, when this building is really going to be at its peak, we'll have parking as well as additional parking across the street as part of the raceway facilities that aren't as busy, obviously, in the winter months. So we'll be able to kind of utilize the existing parking that's there. So there should be ample to service the facility.
What's their number of parking spots in that drawing?
You know what? Good question. 20? That's a guess, but I can get an exact number. And this red facility here is a small airlock building that's going to connect to the existing building that's already there. I don't know if you guys are familiar with that Canada Games Complex building, so that will have additional either locker room or storage or office space. We might as well utilize that building, it's there, so we've budgeted for a building allocation there. The next slide. So this is just some examples of kind of, this is a half 9-on-9 field on the left-hand side, and then a 7-on-7 dual field on the inside. So that's just to kind of show what size once you're inside the facility for play. So yeah.
So you could have 3 games going on at the same time?
Yeah, yeah, two or three, depending on the age group.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is a really important slide, in my opinion. It's the goal and the vision for this facility, and we've been careful to use the word multi-purpose from the start. This is not a baseball complex. This is not a soccer complex. This is not a Tiddlywinks complex. This is a multi-purpose venue that we want to make sure we welcome a broad scope of sports and athletes in through the doors. In order for it to be successful, we need to diversify. I talked about the size of the dome, so it's going to allow us to divide the facility into halves or quarters so that you can have a baseball practice happening on one end and a football practice in the middle and a birthday party in the other end, and then an hour later it's pickleball and something else, to really get as many community members out enjoying the facilities as possible. Not to mention, from a sport tourism perspective, especially in the winter months, hosting 7-on-7 tournaments and having multiple games going at one time will help the winter season tourism model as well.
Would that be a golf practice place, or would the balls be too hard on the canvas?
No, netting will be part of the plan so far, so that you can hit drives, and you can practice golf at any level. So from an operations standpoint, I just wanted to kind of run by council the operations model and the budget we're working with. So during our research at all the other venues in Atlantic Canada, we obviously asked for what their operating budgets look like and what obviously their fee structures are like. So this is a breakdown of East Hants, UNB, Truro, and Moncton's peak and non-peak times and full or half field rentals. So for example, if you look at November 1st to May 31st, half dome on the East Hants side, it's $170 an hour for their usage, 95, and non-peak UNB, theirs is the same size as ours, so their full field rental's $250, and for half it's $130. Cougar Dome $115 and $105, Moncton $235 and $180. So we've looked at that. We want to make the venue as affordable as possible and get people in the door. So we're proposing a little different structure for now. We're looking at a $50 half and a $100 full during the day, and a $100 full and a $100 half and a $200 full in the peak times of the year.
Suppose those palm trees are gonna make it?
I'm hoping. We'll plant some and try anyway.
Can you go back inside with your photo there? I'm just wondering
Inside?
the lighting on the inside of it.
Oh yeah, sure. I'm trying to get the best lighting photo. So this is probably the closest to what our lighting will look like. So those
Okay,
are
I see that.
LED uplights that hang are the best options. So why I'm talking pricing structure, just for council's update, and as well, just in order for us to meet our budget targets and pay for the building on an operating standpoint, this is sort of what we're proposing. But another reason why is until our venue sort of nestles into its operating model, we're going to be a little unsure of our costs. And why I say that is domes are very, very weather dependent. The way they operate the dome in East Hants is almost completely different than the way they operate the dome in UNB, and they're only 5-hour drive away from one another. Weather plays such a factor. So in Nova Scotia, for example, near the coast, you get a lot of wet, heavy snow. So they're heating a lot to keep that snow load off the dome and avoid it from collapsing, which has happened at their dome on a handful of occasions. So what keeps the snow off is obviously heating the inside to melt the snow and shed the snow off. Whereas in Fredericton, they get a lot colder temperatures. They do deal with ice, but they don't get as much snow. So they're more using fans to pressurize and keep the ice from forming and hardening on the roof. So there's all these factors, and until we really get to know our weather patterns and what it's going to cost, budgeting for our energy consumption, which is really the most expensive component of operating these domes, is going to be a little unknown. So we're budgeting on the safe side in terms of expenses, and we're trying to be as reasonable as we can to get volume through the doors. But we may and likely will have to adjust our rate card in order to accommodate for that energy consumption as the years go on. But we won't know until the first winter, 2 or 3, to really get into it. So,
JP, if we got word that there's another major windstorm coming, like Dorian, sorry. But anyway, how long does it take to let the air out of it, if you will, and to get it back up?
it's about a 4-hour process to remove all of the lighting, get all of the door structures out of the way. It is literally a big balloon, so anything that can pierce the skin of it when it comes down is going to cut a hole in it. So East Hants, for example, has about a 4-hour period where they have to bring zoom booms in and unhook all the lighting, remove all the exit door frames, get everything off the field, and just let it come down. Dorian is an example, though. East Hants, and I think everyone except for UNB left theirs up, and they're designed to withstand certain wind speeds, and they'll be fine. You spend 24 hours managing the pressure and monitoring it. So our dome manager that's going to be their responsibility, and our ops team to forever be balancing energy consumption and cost, but also making sure that it's comfortable inside for athletes to use, and making sure it stays inflated at all times.
Will it be connected into our solar system that's there now for the Cup, or that's still being designed?
Better question for Greg. The short answer is yes. How is a whole other kind of discussion, but yes.
I see some red lights on here, but maybe you want to keep going before?
No, that's a really quick synopsis. It's my last slide. I just wanted to give sort of a real general high-level overview of where we're at. The vision behind it being a true multi-purpose venue. And yeah, just let council know that we're plugging away, and we hope to be in ground in April. So.
Thank you, JP. Is there any questions from members of council for JP after his great presentation? Eric?
It looks great. I know I had people last weekend had messaged me. They were more to the soccer end of it, wondering about that, whereas personally in my house it would be the baseball side of it. Currently we drive to Stratford every week, so this will be great, and it will also allow maybe some of those programs to be offered in Summerside. So another thing that somebody had asked me was in the summer. So this is like fully operational, 12 months a year, going to be up unless, like you said, weather, storms.
It's up for debate, to be honest with you. We're building the structure that it can be taken down and put back up. My early assumptions were that deflating it and putting it away for the summer would be cost effective, so that we're not paying to keep a dome inflated all summer long when really most people want to be outside. But it's really not that expensive to run blowers all summer as long as there's interest, and a lot of venues have been seeing a lot of leagues and especially at the youth level and senior level wanting to come inside and get out of the blinding sun and the heat as our summers get hotter, and rain and whatever else. So we have the ability. We don't have to take it down. The challenge with taking it down is we have to bring in whatever dome supplier wins the tender to come in and do the process with us, and it takes about 50 people to properly package it up, put it on a skid, and take it away. It's not like a small balloon, it's a big thing. So, and we don't want to damage it, and we want to make sure it goes down properly. In order to keep our warranties, we have to bring in the supplier. So we have to weigh that against what it costs just to keep it up. So I would say for now, the first summer, I would suggest we're probably going to leave it up, measure revenue streams, and if we get challenged in that area, we may look look at taking it down. But I know that if we program it properly with summer camps and we really drive the value of coming inside, I think it'll be at least paying for itself is our hope.
Yeah.
And I underline hope.
That's awesome. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Coleman.
Okay, I was wondering, Director JP, about the costing, the hourly rates. Is that comparable to the other dome centers?
So it's below, but I know that we'll do an annual adjustment. You know, we wrestled with it. You know, we don't need, some may disagree, but we don't need to get rich off of this thing, but we need it to pay for itself.
Right.
So we want to balance the demand and making sure that it's operating, and it's always full every hour of every day that we possibly can rent it. We want to be able to rent it, and we don't want it to be cost prohibitive.
Mm-hmm.
And we've heard from other venues that, you know, really, in my opinion, overcharge for their service, and they're not as busy as they'd like to be. So it'll be a sweet spot. So that's why I keep saying, when we find out what our real operating costs are going to be, and we find that sweet spot for operating in terms of what we can charge, we'll leave it there, and then we'll add our annual cost of living piece to it, so there's no sticker shock to the users, just like we do with our ice time and other things, and try and keep it at that point. And I do have this on my slide. I'm going to be proposing, at least to Rob, that 2% or 3% of the net profits, if there are any, hopefully there is, be put into a capital improvement fund every year or more, so that when the time comes after 15 or 25 years that we need to replace this dome or the turf, there's cash there to do it with, so we're
Right.
not coming back to the general fund to do it with.
Right. I have one second question. Realizing that it's a legacy project and that specifically it's tourism, sports and whatnot. My question that's just sort of in my mind is, has there ever been any talk or consideration that if the city was faced with some kind of an emergency, have any of the other domes, have they ever been used for anything just to offset as an off-site place if there ever was an emergency? I'm thinking Dorian, but that it's all going to be weather depending and those kinds of things. But if there ever was a need, I don't want to put you on the spot,
No. I'm not aware of the other venues and what they've done in terms of EMO planning and use of the domes. I would say following an emergency, if you know, the days following a Dorian or Duran, that we would be able to utilize the space for a warming shelter or that type of thing as needed, once the, you know, energy services were restored and that kind of thing. Now, there is a backup generator that in, for example, in East Hance's situation, runs off of propane. So it can run off grid, so that if the power does go out, it doesn't just collapse, those types of things. But I don't know that I would recommend it in a hurricane or an ice storm until it was over. Yeah. But I know what you mean after the fact, for sure, for sure, yeah.
that we just have something as a possibility if the need were created, but not
It's a 65,000 square foot room that can be heated or air conditioned. So I mean, we've been looking at all kinds of options, from what a way to grow grassroots and cowboy boots to any other major event that's challenged for space, you know, so it's there for the community to use.
Thank you, JP.
I think Justin.
Oh, Councillor Duran, yeah, go ahead.
Thanks, Councillor Snow. JP, you mentioned earlier, you know, the different kind of uses that this can be put towards. Is it easily, maybe not easily, but how reconfigurable is it? Like, can you have a soccer game 9-on-9? Is that what it was, 9-on-9? Is that the right amount of players on the soccer? Can you have like a big game one day and then kind of switch it over to basketball or pickleball for the next day, or is it something that we kind of have a main use for and then reconfigure it once in a while?
We're still doing work on that, but as an example, we used to set up our basketball floor for the Storm in 4 hours. So that same 4 hours can be done on a turf with forklifts and put out. So what we're looking at is probably, and again, these are all ifs, we're still going through the tendering and the dreaming phase, but if we have the ability to buy a pickleball court, and I'm just using pickleball as an example, maybe Tuesdays and Wednesdays are pickleball days on half the field, and the other half is baseball, and then we reconfigure on Wednesdays and Thursdays for basketball on one side and football on the other. And I mean, I'm just throwing these ideas out there, but that's likely our plan, and we're in the business of overnight conversions, so if we have to be ready the next morning at 7 a.m. for, I keep picking on pickleball, but pickleball or tennis or whatever, if we have the facilities to do it, that would be part of our plan.
Okay, no, that's great. So it's not something that it'll be strictly soccer you know,
No.
it'll be
multi-purpose.
That's,
Yeah, I
that
know,
is
but,
that
yeah.
is the fundamental, and
Fairly
and
easily,
we,
though.
that's why I put it on this slide, is just we want to make sure it's as diverse and versatile as possible going forward, so.
Perfect. Councillor McDougall.
Thank you. Just a quick question on the East Hants Dome. I know, and the reason I asked that is my son, they live over there, and the dome was down for quite a time. What happened to that? Was it wind or
It was snow.
was it snow?
Yeah,
That was,
a snow load took it down on the last occasion. I'm not sure about the other two, but the
Yeah.
last one was snow. And that the operator over there, and his name escapes me, but we spent a full day with him, and he's
Good.
one of the sharpest guys in our business, in my opinion. And he really, he's really encouraging us to select and I'm not going to say it in publicly, but a specific provider.
okay.
That's not the one he has, and again, I'm not going to get into that
Right.
piece, but it's a bit of an older technology that their dome currently operates with,
Yeah.
and there's honestly too much insulation in the dome. So if you waited too long
Too
to start
heavy.
applying heat, and it's such a big space that the snow loads were just too fierce, too quick, and you
Yeah.
couldn't keep up.
Yeah, no, and that's the reason I asked that question, because I know it was an issue for the, see, my nerves are gone. With this glass here, I just seen a reflection, I thought it was a cat. Anyway,
That would scare you.
they, I know the dome was down for a considerable bit of time,
Scared
so,
yourself.
yeah. Anyway,
Oddly
thank
enough,
you.
the day that I presented the concept to the Canada Games Council that were here was the day that it fell. It was a lead story on CBC, so I'm pitching the dome that's laying on the ground in his hands.
All right, thank you.
Speaking of lights, now with these lights, everybody
gotta
got
get-
two lights. coming
Exactly,
here with a
exactly.
shadow.
Councillor Ramsey.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Snow. And first of all, Deputy Mayor McColman, thank you for bringing that emergency measures, at least an option for us. CAO Rob and Norman and I have been working on a plan for quite some time now, and it will be a nice option if that, if that's allowed. And we won't go in during the storm, but we may be able to go in after the storm, and that's nice to know. And the other question or thing that I wanted to bring up was I was wondering if it was going to be able to be used for different entertainment. And when you said the grassroots event, and so it's nice to know that we would have a facility that large to accommodate something like that. And the other thing is I really liked when you said we don't want to get rich on this, because I'd like for it to be cost effective and affordable for everyone. I like what we do here in Summerside with the credit union place, and that it's so affordable for our residents, and I like, John Paul, that you're thinking along those lines, and I appreciate that. And thank you for the great presentation.
Councillor Campbell.
I've been waiting to hear it, and nobody said, when I get a grandson, said, well, the number one sport is hockey. Number two is lacrosse.
There's a lacrosse picture
there's
in the
a
middle
crosshair
there.
right
I'm
there,
just
yeah.
saying, sorry. It's on my notes. Yeah, no, the lacrosse club will have equal
I
access,
just
that's
said
our plan.
two or three people that were involved with the sport is really
Yep.
make a difference.
Yep.
Any other questions, Your Worship?
No, just a comment, and I think it was mentioned by one of the councillors, or maybe JP, that with the events that we host here, this will be a great opportunity to host other kinds of events, whether it's soccer tournaments to all of the sports that you mentioned. So that will add to our events and the economic stimulus to our community. And the opportunity will be there to host them.
Probably have a banquet, different things like that.
We're exploring the idea, and I brought up grassroots, just, we're still looking at, we have to get a cover to go over top of the turf itself, and that's a 65,000 square foot cover. So it's gonna come down to tenders and what we get into, but I'm just saying there is endless possibilities if we invest properly. It's no different than we invested in the covering for our arena ice surface. It was an expensive endeavor, but look at all the things we've been able to do since we invested in that. So it's part of our plan, but eventually we're gonna have to stop dreaming and start picking what we can afford. So everything's on the table as of now.
Just one final question, Mr. Chairman. I was thinking the Atlanticade. Obviously, it won't be ready for that, but for a couple of years. But how many people would be allowed in this kind of a facility? Not with, that's with COVID out of the way. You know, I mean,
Yeah, 10.
I mean, if, when you have Atlantic 8, if you happen to get a damp day, what an opportunity
Yeah.
to have how many 100 people or how many thousand?
Yeah, I can't answer. It would come down to the number of exits and egress points and fire code and all
Yes,
that
I
type of thing.
understand that.
But it's certainly a consideration that I've asked our engineers to look at. It's not that costly to throw in multiple exits if it does open the door for more possibilities. So it's part of our plan. So we'll see where it goes.
What's the square footage again?
65,000.
I'm just thinking about, I know we have the credit union, at the credit union place, the showcase. We used to have it before COVID, but it was all, you know, whether you could have a car show in there to, I don't know what the base of the floor would be, but anyway, great opportunity.
Possibilities are endless.
Yeah, this is truly a great opportunity for our community, and when we started talking about it, it was from a community services standpoint, it's something that's been amazing. So thank you, JP. The two things just in closing, and you mentioned it, pickleball. Although you've talked about it lots, I don't know other councillors, but being chair of community services, and I know JP, we've received lots of inquiries from the pickleball community, which is thriving and massive in Summerside. There's lots of people getting into the sport, and it's something they're really wanting us to sort of look into and grow as a city. Me and JP have talked lots about that. And then the other one was the basketball and how we have the basketball court and whether or not how we can utilize that, maybe get it set up. And that's another thing that many people throughout the city has sort of reached out and said, you know what, we usually have access to schools, but we don't have a community gym where we can go play basketball, that sort of stuff. So the possibilities are endless. So it's great to see, and I look forward to us continuing down this path. So anything else, JP, before I move on to the next agenda item?
Just for the record, we should have it recorded that we want to thank the Canada Game Society for their support on this so far. So we pass on our thank you to the Canada Game Board.
Oh,
I think just one of the other things, just as an afterthought, where the province is really trying to recruit and attract physicians and doctors, I think some kind of an asset like this would be really good, along with everything else that they look for in communities. So that would be a real plus.
we're definitely moving in a great direction. Councillor Adams, do you have another question?
Just out of curiosity, when you mentioned basketball, so would the floor that you have currently at the Cup be able to be used here, or would it have to be a new one purchased?
No, it'd be the one we have, and it would be, the only thing we're trying to confirm is what we need to buy to go under it, between the turf and the floor.
Okay.
The floor and the ice surface at the Cup is certainly not level, and that no ice surfaces are. So we're thinking that we may not need to put anything down and it won't damage the turf, but we're trying to confirm that. And if that's the case, then it's as simple as selecting, you know, and we got to pay the labor to set it up and tear it down, but you know, multiple days a week of having the availability of a gym floor that doesn't necessarily just have to be used for basketball. It can be badminton, it can be volleyball, it can be fitness classes, it can be whatever. So
Awesome.
So when do you see the saw starting again? Maybe you mentioned it
our
earlier.
goal is to be ready to put tenders out April 1st. And May would be a reasonable time frame, but again, this is all weather dependent, but this summer it would be
So
in the thick of it.
We're not
Yeah.
quite ready yet for the tenders, did you say?
We gotta wait till the new budget year, unless you want to start
Gotta wait to
now.
give them some
I mean,
money.
no. It's not designed yet. We're still firming up the designs and so.
We put it to good use. Okay, so thank you again, JP, for that great update. The other item on the agenda would be the Confederation Trail pedestrian ski-doo use, snowmobile use.
Horses?
Horses, whatever. We're at that time of year where snowmobilers are starting to hit the trails across PEI, and myself and I know some other councillors have been receiving some calls from residents who use the trails in Summerside to walk and get out and get active. And I spoke with JP this morning, and then some other councillors. I sent out an email, and I just thought the timing was right for us to sort of give a community update on the usage of the trails in the city and what currently are the restrictions for snowmobiles or pedestrians or how that works. So JP, do you have an update that you can share with council?
A general one. So inside the city limits on the Confederation Trail, for as long as I can remember or been around here, the trails, formerly known as Confederation Trail, do not prohibit snowmobiles inside the city limits.
Do not prohibit?
Do not. And that's just been my understanding for, well, as I mentioned, since I've worked here. They do have a island-wide agreement with the PEI Snowmobile Federation for exclusive trail usage outside of the designated non-usable areas, which is Summerside, portions of Montague, portions of O'Leary, and Charlottetown, and Summerside. For a number of years, I mean, I've witnessed and noticed snowmobiles on the trails in the city. Last year, I probably got the highest volume of calls as a department, not directly just to me, but me and other department staff saying, you know, trying to utilize the trails for walking my dog or snowshoeing or skiing, and the snowmobiles are whizzing by me and I don't feel safe. So the question was more, do we allow snowmobiles on the trails or not? And the question was, well, we don't. But, you know, it's sort of been an unwritten rule that they just sort of appear there, I guess. This year, when the island trails kind of finished up their annual cleanup, they always call and ask us if we notice anything over the summer. It's kind of a closeout for the year. They asked us if we wanted to, like they do every year, do you want to leave the gates open or would you like to close them? And because I'd received the calls the year before, I said, well, this is a good year to close them and, you know, sort of stand behind our word that it is safe to use the trails. We're still seeing snowmobilers accessing the trails quite frequently. They're going around the gates, going through private property. So I don't know if I made a mistake by saying close the gates, because now we're pushing the situation kind of away from the trails. But in a situation where we're trying to keep walkers and skiers and fat bikers or whatever safe on the trails, that was the attempt. So that's where we're at. We've talked to the Island Trails Federation twice last week. They assured us that their trails do not, once they get to Summerside, they veer off the trail and they have different access, and then they get back on the trail when they're permitted to. They're saying it's not on our maps, we don't promote it to be part of, but from there's nothing more that we can do. So I don't know if there's any more than that to kind of suggest, but that's kind of where we're at. Montague, and I'll just preface by saying it's parts of O'Leary and parts of Montague, and I don't know which parts, and then Charlottetown and us. And there could be others, Councillor Adams, but those are the ones I noted when I called around. And I'll preface that by saying too that in O'Leary, there's interest in having snowmobilers come into some parts of O'Leary to spend money and to utilize restaurants and services, and same in Montague. And then there's other parts that they want to keep, you know, the riders away so that they can recreate. So
it's sort of one of those things. We have obviously snowmobilers within our city that would like to obviously use the trails, and then we have snowmobilers that would be in neighboring communities that, like you said, would come into the, you know, whether or not the downtown core or to our gas stations or whatever through that trail system. But then obviously we have the residents who walk and bike and do the other activities that utilize trail that don't mix well with motorized vehicles. So policing is difficult. I just, with questions coming forward and it's starting, snowmobiles starting to hit the trails, I thought it was very important that we bring it forward.
And another common issue I hear on the other side, I just want to also say that there's snowmobilers who own sleds that live in the city limits and utilize the trail to get out of the city limits and get on the trails. And because it's never really been formally enforced to my knowledge, and I talked to the chief before, and the police don't get involved, they bought sleds because they're thinking, well, I can just, you know, leave my driveway and away I go. And that's a challenge for them as well. So.
Yeah. And that's the frustration that I've heard from residents is, you know, I got a sled, I just want to get out to the trail. But they also recognize the safety of other non-motorized users. So I don't know if they're, and you know, I mean, the last thing we want is, you know, the midnight, 3 o'clock in the morning, folks barreling through town, because, I mean, that has happened as well. And particularly in Wilmot, there had a number of complaints one year about, you know, high-speed snowmobiles going through people's backyards. They're only 10 or 20 feet from their buildings, from their residence, at all hours of the night. But you know, I don't know how you find a way, if even possible, to cooperate with that guy that owns a sled in town that just wants to get out to the trail. Is going to respect that there's other people using the thing, as opposed to, you know, the midnight cowboy that's speeding through town at outrageous speeds on these things. So I don't know if there is a compromise there for the person that lives in town, that owns a sled, that wants to get out to the main trail. Some kind of a licensing thing that, I don't know if that's a possibility.
So I, just on that note, I had a conversation today with one of the representatives from the Island ATV Club, and they're in a similar situation in another community. I don't know which one in PEI, but they did a campaign to all the ATV owners that, you know, when you're looking at buying an ATV, look at buying a trailer, because we don't want to make a situation worse by people riding ATVs through backyards and everything. In other ways, they have a lot of great drop-off locations, and they're large enough to accommodate a truck and a trailer, and that's how they float their units to other parts of the city. So that doesn't solve the problem for those who spend all their money without a trailer, but it's...
No, and then, you know, I think, you know, the individuals talked to me, I think probably had the trailer too, but it's the convenience of just getting on their sled and going, as opposed to having to get on the trailer, park somewhere and worry about the truck when they come back and whatever, so.
Thank you, Councillor McFeely. Any other, Councillor McDougall?
Yeah, just, I agree with Brian. I was thinking similar. You know, some of the people that we do have that lives right along the trail there, I know that they usually come in through Linklater there, through the trail, cross South Drive, they get down a bit, and then they go up by the intersection of Pope and Greenwood, and go up, and then in behind, and go up through the Rotary Park. I've seen them go through there. Yeah, it's... Yeah, and we haven't had a whole lot of, I haven't had a whole lot of complaints about that area. It's when they're coming in closer to downtown has always been the big issue. And so I just, you know, maybe the ones that do have that want to access the trail to get out of town, if we could get a permit or something like that, just some kind of a, anyway, we'd have to work that through the association, but anyway,
That's a good point, and I just point out that trail that you're referencing is actually not part of the Island Trails route. It's just a trail that has been cut by, because over the years the route has changed and there's still people using the same route. But what we're seeing is as development happens, for example on McEwen, where it used to be belong to the POP, it's parallel to the land where the Rotary Park Trail is. There's buildings there now. It's no longer part of the PEI trail system. There's signage up, there's snow fencing up, but we're still seeing snowmobiles go within 3 feet of somebody's back deck, seniors' houses, to go to the SO or what have you. So I think fundamentally, and this is just my department's opinion, is that we as a council and a staff need to decide whether we want to either say the trails are not for anyone but walkers, bikers, or they are for snowmobiles, because that's what the province did from a safety perspective. Or do we want to start working with the clubs and the users to kind of find areas that we say aren't and some areas that are, like they've done in O'Leary and Montague? And maybe council wants to direct staff through the CAO to look at that, or?
I think we need to, like you say, come up with a decision one way or the other, if we're gonna allow it or not, or possibly identify some certain areas that we can get a thorough way to get through the city. But it's a tough one, especially policing wise. How do you police it? How do you? It is a tough issue, but it's something that I know we have started to hear and will continue to hear over the winter. So it's nice to be as proactive as possible and let those residents that have concerns know we're working at it. So.
And Corey, if you don't mind, I think that it's important that if there are specific areas that the snowmobilers are going to be using, then the residents are aware of that, and then they can choose to go the other direction, right? And so I think it can help in with everybody if we can come up with some kind of solution here. Yeah.
Councilman
You know, I mean, we got miles and miles and miles of trails. And, I mean, Rotary Park, the boardwalk. You know, if we can find a way or identify a way out of the city for these folks so they can get out to the main trail. So, you know, I would certainly support kind of staff taking a look at what the possibilities are there. May not be possible, and that, you know, that's fine, but at least take a look at it. Your point about development's well taken, because I understand that new little development up the top of McEwen Road where the new duplexes are there, or row houses, just before the hospital on the right-hand side going up. Like that, they go right through the main street there. Has traditionally been the path through the snowmobiles. They're still going
now it's
through
Well,
it.
they go through the backyards,
Yeah.
and then if snow fence went up to the backyard, so then they started going through the front yard.
Yeah, they're going right down the middle of the street there, so. Anyways, I would really support kind of taking a look at it, see if there is a possibility of the way to you know, that these things can cohabitate.
Right.
And,
Yeah, I
And I
think
get,
Councillor McCormick or Councillor Adams?
I'm just, when you had mentioned the gates, this is the first winter that they've been closed?
No, yes, sorry.
Yes, okay. And so whose responsibility, is that our responsibility or the trail's responsibility to make people know that they are closed now?
So it's the Island Trail's responsibility to close them.
Right.
It's the Island Trail's responsibility to notify the public, and us to a certain degree, and I did that through the Island Trails, or sorry, the PEI Snowmobile Federation.
Right.
So that's assuming everyone's a member, and they're not all members.
Yeah.
So, and you know, I really didn't think that it would cause this kind of an issue when we closed the gates. I was thinking, I'm just trying to keep the walkers from getting hit by a snowmobile. Let's close the gates, just kind of set the tone. But obviously, the snowmobilers have been using those areas for a lot of years. Not supposed to be, but they've been doing it, or saying, well, why are the gates not open, right? So, you know, I don't know any form of communication that would have reached all of them, but we probably should have done more. Again, didn't anticipate.
Could we maybe do like?
Yeah, what I'd like to do is do the work first and with the federation and get a plan that we all kind of go, this looks good, and then roll it out. And I'm gonna try and do that faster than not, so that it's not dragging on through the winter.
Yeah.
I agree, but should we at the current time notify if it is a policy that snowmobilers should not be on our trails within our city, something was ever to happen to, God forbid, with a pedestrian, should we have some sort of public statement out now saying the trails are off limits, within city limits to snowmobiles, just so they are aware we have closed the gates? And I'm just wondering if in the meantime, I'm just a little bit concerned.
I'd like to do it at a time when I have another option for the snowmobilers too. I just don't want to close the door on them. I'd like to close one door and open another to say, you know, you're not allowed in these areas, but here's where you are allowed, and here's what the, you know, Federation and us have worked out. And there's other positive experiences as well, like I think in Montague in years past, they've taken portions of the trails that they're not normally allowed on and hosted events. So they'll pick a night in January where they'll welcome people into the downtown on snowmobiles. They'll fill the restaurants. They'll go slow. People will make sure there's no walkers out, and to try it. And so we can do things like that too. But I think the first step is to find a plan for them and then put out a publication.
And I like what you said, John Paul, were you done, Carrie?
I just had one quick little, so now that the gates are closed, if you have somebody that's coming through and they're not used to them being closed, are they a danger at night of being run into?
Potentially.
And I guess that's why I said, should we make a statement that because they are closed, and they should be closed, because that is the.
I'm just thinking if like
Policy.
somebody from outside of, like, you know, even Prince County was, you know, on a trip or whatever, a day trip or night trip into the night, they were coming along and thought it's usually open and came upon it, it was closed, is it an issue?
Right.
Yeah, maybe Rob just mentioned it. Maybe we'll put out an announcement and say that we are working on some other options. Just be careful
That's-
for now, and just go from there.
Gates have been closed. And
That's exactly what I was going to say, because you said you'd get something out sooner rather than later, and then your concern, Councillor Snow. So it looks like if we could work together real quick and get something out there, that might work. Yeah, great.
perfect. Any other? Oh,
I
Councillor
guess,
Coleman.
just based on what everybody is saying, I'm sort of after the fact agree with what people are speaking on. And I think a very important message that we do have to get out to our residents and the, snowmobilers, everybody involved, is that the city is not against either or. I think in light of COVID-19, we're trying to encourage people to get out and exercise and fitness. We have seniors, we have young families, we have people that want to do active, involvement. And I think if we can find a way to create that awareness, but not dampen the fact that if one group likes a certain thing and somebody else likes something else, and hopefully people can find a way that if we have a few ground rules, that everybody can enjoy the outdoors and the green spaces.
Great.
Just
Your worship?
yeah, just interesting conversation, and I think I got the same calls as others in regards to this. But Councillor Adams brought up a point there too. We sort of got two issues here. Can they or should they be on the trails and the gates open or closed, sort of thing. So I agree with the others there that have a look at the situation, see if we can compromise some way, shape, or form. But I guess having used to travel with the junior hockey team up to northern New Brunswick, to Hamilton, to Bathurst, and to Miramichi, and you go by these restaurants, you go by the hotels, you go by the service stations, hundreds of snowmobiles, hundreds of them just packed with, and they're there. So we're talking here about getting a chance to get them out of town, but is there a way we can sort of, for the economy, to get them back here to some way, shape, or form to contribute to the economy? Right. So anyway, I just thought I'd mention that, and so I agree that if you can reach a compromise here to see what can be done. I know that's big business, and the same with the four-wheelers in other parts of the Maritimes and other parts of the island. Right now there's a lot of them, and they pull into towns and leave a lot of money. So it's a big industry in New Brunswick, I know that. So I'll just leave it at that, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Your Worship. On that note, if there's no more questions, we'll call the Community Services meeting adjourned.
I believe we've gotten to the end of the committee meetings. So let's take a 5-minute adjournment here before we come back. I believe there's a couple items for the committee of the whole. Anybody final comments? I guess not, no. Okay, we'll adjourn. Thank you. And Brian, you got this. Brian is in. And I want to thank